Hey guys, tonight we're going to peel back the layers of silk and jade to reveal a very different side of life in ancient China's imperial palace. Not the emperors or concubines, but the unseen, unsung heroes who kept the whole vast machine running, the servant girls. You might imagine a life of elegant simplicity, perhaps a few pleasant chores. But trust me, you probably wouldn't survive back then. Their days were a grueling marathon of physical labor, endless tasks, and a constant scramble for even the most basic necessities. All within the gilded cage of the Forbidden City. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's Friday evening here in Phu Lai, Ha Nam, Vietnam, and the sounds of the city are just starting to wind down. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins not with the emperor stirring from his opulent bed, but with the early morning bell, awakening. You are a servant girl, and long before the first rays of dawn even think about touching the vermilion walls of the Forbidden City, a sharp, clear bell pierces the pre-dawn quiet. It's not a gentle alarm clock, it's a summons, a stark reminder that your day of relentless labor has begun, while the world outside still slumbers. You're probably sharing a crowded, dimly lit barack with dozens, maybe hundreds, of other girls, the air thick with the scent of straw mats and unwashed clothes. The bell means you have mere moments to shake off the lingering exhaustion from yesterday's endless tasks, to rub the sleep from your eyes, and to prepare your body for another grueling day. There's no time for stretching, no luxurious morning coffee, just the immediate, urgent demand of the palace. It's less about a leisurely wake-up and more about being jolted into action. Like hitting the ground running for a marathon you never signed up for. You quickly rise from your rough straw mat, probably feeling stiff and sore from sleeping on the hard ground. The barracks are already stirring, a cacophony of quiet rustles, hushed whispers, and the shuffling of bare feet on cold stone floors. There's no warm water for washing your face. A splash of icy water from a communal basin is all you get, a bracing shock to the system. Your clothes are simple, often made of coarse fabric, and you quickly put them on, knowing they'll soon be stained with sweat and dirt. The air is still cold, especially in the depths of winter, and you pull your thin tunic tighter, wishing for just 5 more minutes of warmth. But the bell dictates all, and dawdling means punishment, so you quickly join the stream of other girls heading out into the pre-dawn chill. This early start isn't just about getting ahead. It's about being ready for the imperial family's earliest demands, ensuring that the palace machinery begins grinding long before its esteemed occupants even consider opening their eyes. One mainstream historical fact is the extremely early starts for palace servants in imperial China. Their days often began hours before dawn, ensuring that all preparations for the imperial family's awakening, meals, and daily routines were completed well in advance. This demanding schedule was standard for all levels of palace servitude. You can almost feel the deep chill of the pre-dawn palace, a silent testament to the tireless labor that kept the imperial world turning. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes. To ensure all servant girls were indeed awake and out of their barracks on time, a specific senior eunuch or palace matron would perform a light check, walking through the barracks with a lantern, briefly shining it on each sleeping mat. Imagine being jolted awake not by an alarm, but by a very stern, silent figure with a lamp shining in your face, just to make sure you're not faking it. What a truly unsubtle wake-up call. Historians still argue whether the extreme early awakening imposed on palace servants was primarily a practical necessity for efficient palace operations, given the sheer scale and complexity of imperial life, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and discipline, reinforcing the servants' subordinate status and their complete devotion to the imperial household, ensuring they had little personal time or energy for anything else. Was it about efficiency or control? The debate continues, much like the lingering echoes of that first morning bell, a stark, pervasive sound that set the relentless rhythm of a servant girl's day. Beginning long before the world itself had truly awakened. You feel the profound exhaustion, the immediate call to duty, as the first rays of light are still a distant promise. From the sharp summons of the early morning bell, your day as a servant girl immediately plunges into one of its most fundamental and physically demanding tasks: fetching water, a daily chore. You might imagine a tap or a well right outside your barracks. But in the vastness of the imperial palace, fresh, clean water often had to be carried from distant wells or reservoirs, a continuous, arduous process that consumed countless hours and immense physical strength. Imagine hoisting heavy wooden buckets, the cold water sloshing against your legs. As you navigate labyrinthine corridors and sprawling courtyards, making multiple trips before the sun has even properly risen. It's less about a quick trip to the sink and more about an endless, back-breaking pilgrimage, like a very ancient, very painful, water-carrying marathon. As soon as you've shaken off the last vestiges of sleep, you join dozens of other servant girls, often in long lines, heading towards the designated water sources. These could be deep wells within specific palace compounds, or even outside the immediate living quarters, requiring a trek across cobbled paths that might be icy in winter or slippery with dew in summer. The buckets themselves are heavy, often made of wood or ceramic, and once filled, their weight is considerable. You learn quickly how to balance them, perhaps one in each hand, or even a larger one suspended from a shoulder pole, distributing the load across your aching back. The water is needed for everything: drinking for the imperial family, cooking their elaborate meals, washing clothes, cleaning chambers, and tending to the gardens. Your hands quickly become raw and chapped, your shoulders permanently bowed from the constant strain. This chore isn't just about strength, it's about endurance, day after day, year after year, with no end in sight. You can almost feel the dull ache in your muscles, the cold splash of water on your skin, as you carry the lifeblood of the palace. One mainstream historical fact is the lack of modern plumbing in ancient Chinese palaces, making manual water fetching an indispensable and constant task for servants. Large teams of laborers, both male and female, were dedicated solely to this arduous work, ensuring a continuous supply of fresh water for the thousands of residents within the sprawling imperial complex. You can almost hear the rhythmic creak of wooden poles and the slosh of water, a symphony of unseen labor. Now for a quirky tidbit: sometimes, if a particular well was known for having exceptionally pure or sweet water, eunuchs might assign a special, designated team of servant girls to fetch water only from that specific well for the emperor's personal tea or bathing rituals, regardless of its distance. Imagine having to walk an extra mile uphill, both ways, just for the premium water. What a truly dedicated and utterly exhausting form of imperial water service. Historians still argue whether the physically demanding nature of water fetching for palace servants was primarily a practical consequence of technological limitations and the sheer scale of the palace's needs, reflecting the realities of ancient infrastructure, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and social stratification, ensuring that the lowest-ranking servants remained constantly engaged in arduous, non-skilled labor, reinforcing their subservient position. Was it about necessity, or social hierarchy? The debate continues, much like the gentle drip of water from a full bucket, a silent testament to the endless, back-breaking labor that fueled the grandeur of the imperial court. Long before the sun had fully illuminated its splendor, you feel the profound exhaustion, the relentless rhythm of the chore, as you contribute to the very foundation of palace life. From the continuous, grueling task of fetching water, your day as a servant girl now shifts indoors, into the bustling, smoke-filled heart of the palace, kindling the fires, kitchen duty. You might imagine a neat, efficient stove with pre-cut logs. But in ancient imperial kitchens, preparing the fires meant arduous labor, often involving heavy, unrefined fuels and a constant battle against smoke and ash, all under immense pressure to deliver meals on time for the imperial family. Imagine crouching over a clay stove, your eyes watering from the acrid smoke, as you painstakingly arrange rough firewood or charcoal, blowing on stubborn embers until a roaring flame finally catches. Knowing that hundreds of mouths depend on your efforts. It's less about pressing a button and more about raw, elemental effort, like a very ancient, very grimy form of competitive fire starting. As you arrive in the vast imperial kitchens, the air is already thick with the smell of wood smoke, raw ingredients, and the quiet bustle of hundreds of other servants. Your specific task might be to assist the cooks by tending to the various stoves and ovens, ensuring a consistent, powerful heat. This involves hauling heavy bundles of firewood or sacks of charcoal from storage areas, breaking them into manageable pieces, and then carefully layering them into the massive clay or brick stoves. Starting the fires can be a tedious process. You blow on the embers, fan the flames with a straw fan, and constantly adjust the fuel to maintain the ideal temperature for simmering stews, roasting meats, or boiling rice. Your hands quickly become rough and callous from handling the wood, and your face is often smudged with soot. The heat from the multiple stoves is oppressive, especially in summer, making the kitchen a sweltering inferno. This isn't just about providing warmth, it's about providing the literal fuel for the entire imperial court's sustenance. A task both essential and relentless. You can almost feel the intense heat radiating from the stoves, the sting of smoke in your eyes, as you coax life from the cold fuel. One mainstream historical fact is the centrality of large, specialized kitchens in ancient Chinese palaces. These kitchens employed thousands of staff, from master chefs to low-ranking servant girls, to prepare the elaborate multi-course meals for the imperial family and countless palace residents. The sheer scale of food preparation required a continuous, enormous supply of fuel. You can almost hear the crackling of wood, the clatter of pots, and the steady hum of activity from this bustling heart of the palace. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if an emperor was particularly sensitive to smoke or specific odors, certain types of fragrant wood scraps or even dried fruit peels might be mixed into the regular firewood in the kitchens directly serving his private quarters, to subtly perfume the air during cooking. Imagine your kitchen exhaust also acting as a natural air freshener, creating a surprisingly pleasant aroma amidst the typical cooking smells. What a truly subtle, and utterly refined, form of imperial scent control. Historians still argue whether the arduous manual labor of kindling and maintaining kitchen fires for palace servants was primarily a practical consequence of the lack of advanced cooking technology and the enormous demands of imperial banquets, reflecting the realities of ancient culinary arts, or if it also served as a subtle form of social control, ensuring that the lowest-ranking servants were kept perpetually busy with physically draining tasks, limiting their opportunities for mischief or ambition. Was it about necessity or systematic subjugation? The debate continues, much like the gentle flickering of a newly lit flame, a silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that transformed raw fuel into the culinary splendors of the imperial table, long before the first aroma reached the emperor's nose. You feel the profound physical strain, the constant struggle against the elements, as you play a crucial role in feeding an empire. From the hot, smoky heart of the imperial kitchens and the persistent battle with kindling fires, your stomach now begins to rumble, signaling a brief respite from the demanding morning, breakfast scraps, first meal. You might imagine a leisurely, nutritious breakfast served to all palace residents. But for a servant girl, breakfast was often a hurried, meager affair, composed of the barest leftovers or the cheapest grains, consumed quickly before the next wave of chores began. Imagine huddling with a few other girls in a quiet corner, quickly spooning down a mouthful of cold, watery rice porridge, perhaps with a few withered vegetable scraps if you were lucky, savoring every precious bite before you're called away again. It was less about satisfying hunger and more about merely staving off starvation, like a very ancient, very grim grab-and-go breakfast. Your breakfast, if you got one, would typically consist of the most basic, least desirable foodstuffs available. This usually meant a thin gruel or porridge made from coarse grains like millet or cheaper varieties of rice, often watered down to stretch the supply. Vegetables might be limited to wilted greens or fermented scraps, and meat was almost unheard of for someone of your station. This meal wasn't prepared specially for you. It was often leftover from the previous day's imperial cooking, or quickly prepared in bulk for the thousands of low-ranking servants. There was no designated dining hall for you, no tables or chairs. You'd find a quiet corner, perhaps a step or a wall, and quickly consume your portion. Always alert for the call of a senior eunuch or matron. This swift, humble meal was a stark contrast to the multi-course feasts being prepared for the imperial family, a constant, tangible reminder of your place in the palace hierarchy. You can almost feel the thin, unsatisfying warmth of the gruel, the lingering taste of plainness, as you quickly refuel for the day ahead. One mainstream historical fact is the highly stratified nature of food distribution within the imperial palace. The quality and quantity of food varied dramatically with rank. From the emperor's lavish banquets to the simple, often insufficient, rations provided to low-ranking servants. This reflected the strict social hierarchy that governed every aspect of palace life. You can almost hear the quiet, almost furtive slurping of porridge, a stark contrast to the opulent dining chambers upstairs. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes. If a servant girl was particularly clever or befriended a kindly kitchen eunuch, she might manage to acquire a bonus item, perhaps a straight piece of tougher meat that wasn't deemed worthy of the imperial table, or an extra, slightly bruised fruit. Imagine the sheer delight of finding a hidden treasure in your otherwise bland breakfast, a tiny luxury amidst the daily drudgery. What a truly rare, and incredibly cherished form of imperial food lottery! Historians still argue whether the meager and often inadequate diet provided to low-ranking palace servants was primarily a practical consequence of managing food supplies for an enormous population, and the necessity of frugality within the vast imperial bureaucracy, or if it also served as a deliberate tool of control and discipline, ensuring that servants remained physically subdued and dependent, limiting their energy for dissent or escape. Was it about resource management, or systemic oppression? The debate continues. Much like the gentle clinking of a ceramic bowl, a silent testament to the constant, underlying hunger that defined a servant girl's morning, fueling her for another relentless day within the gilded confines of the Forbidden City. You feel the constant gnawing of hunger, the struggle for basic sustenance, even within walls overflowing with abundance. From the fleeting sustenance of breakfast scraps, your day as a servant girl now shifts to one of the most visible, yet thankless, tasks in the palace. Laundry lines, endless washing. You might imagine a few delicate garments being cleaned with fragrant soaps. But for you, laundry meant ceaseless, back-breaking labor. Handling enormous quantities of soiled fabric, from the emperor's silk robes to the eunuch's coarser tunics, all without the benefit of modern machinery or even hot running water. Imagine your hands plunged into icy water, scrubbing coarse fabrics against rough washboards, the sheer volume of clothes stretching out before you like an endless, daunting river of dirt. It's less about a quick load and more about an aquatic marathon, like a very ancient, very smelly, never-ending wash cycle. You'd spend hours, often from mid-morning until well into the afternoon, in designated laundry courtyards or by large communal troughs. The clothes arrived in vast piles, heavy embroidered silks from the imperial family, coarser cottons and linens from the lower ranks, all varying in dirtiness and delicacy. Your tools were rudimentary, large wooden tubs, harsh lye soaps, if you were lucky enough to have them. Often it was just ashes mixed with water, and rough scrubbing boards or even just bare stones. You'd rub, beat, and wring each piece by hand, repeating the process countless times until the fabric was deemed clean. Then came the rinsing, often in cold water, and the arduous task of hanging everything to dry on long lines stretched across courtyards, carefully arranging heavier items so they wouldn't tear. Your fingers would be perpetually pruny and chapped, your back aching from the constant bending and lifting. The sheer volume of washing was staggering. Imagine the daily wardrobe changes for hundreds, if not thousands, of imperial residents. You can almost feel the burning in your shoulders, the icy chill of the water, and the pervasive scent of damp fabric, a testament to the colossal effort required to keep the palace clean. One mainstream historical fact is the enormous scale of textile consumption and maintenance within the imperial court. The imperial family owned vast wardrobes, changing outfits multiple times a day for different rituals or occasions, creating an immense, continuous demand for laundry services. This required dedicated teams of servant girls and eunuchs whose sole job was washing. You can almost hear the rhythmic slap of wet cloth against stone, a sound that permeated the palace courtyards throughout the day. Now for a quirky tidbit: sometimes, to get certain delicate silks particularly white or bright, servant girls might use a secret ingredient, a small amount of finely ground pearl powder mixed into the final rinse water, believing it would impart a subtle shimmer and enhance the fabric's luster. Imagine using literal crushed jewels in your laundry, just to make the emperor's socks sparkle a little brighter. What a truly extravagant, and utterly unscientific, form of imperial fabric softener. Historians still argue whether the physically brutal nature of laundry work for palace servant girls was primarily a practical necessity given the limitations of technology and the sheer volume of clothes, reflecting the unavoidable realities of pre-industrial hygiene, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and punishment, intentionally assigning exhausting, low-status tasks to reinforce the servants' subservient position and break their spirit. Was it about necessity, or systematic subjugation? The debate continues. Much like the gentle flapping of clothes on a distant line, a silent testament to the endless, back-breaking labor that kept the imperial court looking pristine, long before the first hint of sunset. You feel the profound physical toll, the ceaseless demand, as you tirelessly work to maintain the palace's facade of grandeur. From the ceaseless, hand-chapping labor of the laundry lines, your day as a servant girl now shifts to another pervasive, never-ending task: sweeping courtyards, maintaining order. You might imagine a simple broom and a few minutes of tidying. But in the vastness of the imperial palace, maintaining immaculate courtyards and pathways was a colossal undertaking, a constant battle against dust, fallen leaves, and the general wear of thousands of daily footsteps. Imagine wielding a heavy straw broom, your back aching, as you meticulously sweep vast expanses of stone and earth, only for the wind to scatter new debris moments later, making your efforts feel perpetually futile. It's less about a quick tidy-up and more about an ongoing, Sisyphean struggle against nature and entropy, like a very ancient, very dusty, never-ending street-sweeping operation. As you move from one chore to the next, you'll find yourself assigned to a specific courtyard or section of pathway. These courtyards were not just open spaces, they were integral to the palace's aesthetics and functionality, serving as transit routes, ceremonial areas, and quiet retreats. Your tools are basic: a large broom made of bundled straw or bamboo, and perhaps a small dustpan. You sweep in rhythmic, repetitive motions, pushing piles of dust, grit, and fallen leaves into neat mounds to be collected later. The work is physically demanding, requiring constant bending and sweeping, often under the blazing sun or in the biting cold. And it's a never-ending task. The palace is a living, breathing entity, constantly generating dirt and debris. A gust of wind can undo hours of work, and the footprints of passing eunuchs or guards leave fresh marks on your freshly swept ground. This constant battle against disorder is a direct reflection of the imperial ideal of harmony and control, even in the smallest details of the palace environment. You can almost feel the grit beneath your worn sandals, the repetitive strain in your back, and the subtle frustration of an effort that is never truly finished. One mainstream historical fact is the obsession with cleanliness and order within the imperial palace. Chinese imperial etiquette demanded impeccable surroundings, reflecting the emperor's divine mandate and the harmony of his rule. This led to enormous resources and manpower being dedicated to maintaining a spotless environment. Even in the farthest reaches of the complex, you can almost hear the rhythmic swish of a broom, a pervasive background sound in the silent ballet of palace maintenance. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a rare or exotic bird perched on a palace roof and left droppings on a freshly swept courtyard, certain superstitious eunuchs might immediately summon a servant girl to clean it, believing it to be a bad omen if left for too long. Imagine having to sprint across a huge courtyard, not just for cleanliness, but to avert cosmic disaster from a bird's unfortunate bathroom break. What a truly high-stakes, and rather bizarre, form of imperial janitorial duty. Historians still argue whether the constant, arduous task of sweeping courtyards for palace servants was primarily a practical necessity for hygiene and aesthetic maintenance in a vast, unpaved environment, reflecting the realities of ancient urban upkeep, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and social conditioning, ensuring that the lowest-ranking servants remained perpetually engaged in physically demanding, low-status labor, reinforcing their subservient roles and limiting their time for independent thought or mischief. Was it about cleanliness, or subjugation? The debate continues. Much like the gentle whisper of wind rustling through newly swept leaves, a silent testament to the ceaseless, largely unseen efforts that upheld the pristine facade of imperial grandeur. Long before the sun began its descent, you feel the profound exhaustion, the relentless cycle, as you play a small but crucial part in maintaining the palace's vast, ordered beauty. From the pervasive, unending task of sweeping courtyards, your day as a servant girl sometimes leads you to a more aesthetically pleasing, yet still demanding, chore, gardening duties. Imperial greenery. You might imagine a leisurely stroll through fragrant blossoms. But for you, working in the imperial gardens meant tireless effort, weeding, watering, pruning, and planting, all to maintain the exquisite beauty of the palace's natural landscapes for the exclusive enjoyment of the imperial family. Imagine crouching for hours under the hot sun, painstakingly plucking tiny weeds from around delicate peony bushes, or carrying heavy watering cans to distant flower beds, your hands stained with soil and your back aching from the constant bending. It's less about artistic cultivation and more about relentless horticultural labor, like a very ancient, very vast, forced botanical exhibition. The imperial gardens were not just ornamental. They were meticulously designed landscapes, often featuring rare plants, intricate rock formations, serene ponds, and winding pathways. They served as places of leisure, contemplation, and even entertainment for the emperor and his favored consorts. Your role in these gardens would be vital but physically taxing. You'd be responsible for regular weeding, ensuring no undesirable plant dared to mar the perfect aesthetic. Watering, especially during dry seasons, involved carrying heavy loads of water. Remember that water fetching from Section 2 to thirsty plants. You might also be tasked with pruning overgrown branches, raking fallen leaves, or preparing soil for new plantings. The pressure was immense. Any sign of neglect could lead to severe punishment, as the gardens were a reflection of imperial splendor and harmony. You can almost feel the rough texture of soil beneath your nails, the subtle scent of damp earth and blossoms, and the persistent ache in your joints from hours of kneeling. One mainstream historical fact is the sophistication and importance of garden design in ancient China. Imperial gardens were considered high art forms, meticulously planned and maintained, often incorporating philosophical principles and representing miniature versions of the universe. Their upkeep required vast numbers of dedicated laborers. You can almost hear the soft rustle of leaves, a testament to the endless, quiet work that sustained these living masterpieces. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a rare or particularly beautiful bloom was expected to flower on a specific date, perhaps for an imperial celebration, servant girls might be assigned to night shifts to meticulously guard the plant against pests or even daring thieves, ensuring it bloomed perfectly for the emperor's viewing. Imagine pulling an all-nighter, not for a party, but to babysit a very important flower. What a truly dedicated, and utterly peculiar, form of botanical security. Historians still argue whether the arduous labor of servant girls in imperial gardens was primarily a practical necessity for maintaining the vast and complex landscapes, reflecting the scale of ancient horticulture, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and social conditioning, ensuring that the lowest-ranking servants remained perpetually engaged in physically demanding, low-status tasks, reinforcing their subservient roles and limiting their personal time or energy for anything else. Was it about beauty or subjugation? The debate continues. Much like the gentle whisper of wind through a meticulously pruned tree, a silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that cultivated the exquisite natural beauty of the palace. Long before the sun began its descent, you feel the profound physical strain, the constant battle against nature's wildness, as you contribute to the emperor's serene sanctuary. From the sun-drenched, dusty labor of the imperial gardens, your day as a servant girl now shifts to a brief, anticipated pause, midday porridge, sustaining energy. You might imagine a proper lunch break with a variety of dishes. But for you, the midday meal was typically another humble, often watery, serving of porridge, providing just enough caloric intake to fuel your body for the grueling afternoon tasks. Imagine quickly finding a spot, perhaps against a cool wall in the shade, as you swiftly spoon down the warm, bland gruel, feeling its thin warmth spread through your tired limbs, a brief moment of quiet before the next wave of duties sweeps you away. It's less about a satisfying meal and more about a functional refueling, like a very ancient, very plain, midday energy shot. Around midday, or when the more important residents of the palace were finishing their own elaborate lunches, a simple meal would be distributed to the lower-ranking servants. This nearly always consisted of a thin, often lukewarm, porridge made from grains like millet, barley, or even coarse rice. Sometimes, if you were lucky, it might have a few boiled vegetables or a pinch of salt for flavor. But often it was just plain grain boiled in water. This meal was designed purely for sustenance, providing the minimum energy required to keep you working. There were no designated dining times or dining halls for servant girls. You'd eat wherever you could find a moment of peace, perhaps in a courtyard corner, by a kitchen door, or tucked away in a quiet corridor. The eating was quick, efficient, and often silent, as conversations could draw unwanted attention or delay your return to chores. You'd feel the warmth in your belly, a fleeting comfort against the pervasive chill of exhaustion. This simple meal was your only guaranteed sustenance between the meager breakfast and the uncertain evening scraps, a crucial, if uninspiring, bridge between the morning and afternoon's endless demands. One mainstream historical fact is the dietary staples of grains and vegetables for the common people and lower classes in ancient China. Meat was a luxury, and their diet was primarily plant-based, reflecting the agricultural economy and the societal hierarchy where higher ranks had access to more varied and luxurious foods. The servant girl's diet was a direct reflection of this societal norm. You can almost hear the soft, almost imperceptible sounds of hundreds of bowls being scraped clean, a quiet testament to their daily struggle for calories. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a particular batch of midday porridge was accidentally made too thick or flavorful, a rare occurrence, the kitchen eunuchs might try to dilute it with extra water before distributing it to the servant girls, fearing that a too good meal might make them lazy or too content. Imagine the horror of seeing perfectly decent porridge being watered down right before your eyes. What a truly disheartening, and utterly miserly, form of imperial portion control. Historians still argue whether the consistently meager midday meals provided to palace servant girls were primarily a practical consequence of managing vast food supplies and controlling costs in an enormous imperial household, reflecting efficient resource allocation, or if they also served as a subtle tool of discipline and subjugation, ensuring that the servants remained perpetually in a state of minimal physical comfort and constant dependence, limiting their potential for resistance or ambition. Was it about economics or control? The debate continues, much like the gentle warmth fading from a thin bowl, a silent testament to the constant, underlying struggle for basic sustenance that fueled a servant girl's unyielding day. Amidst the extravagant abundance of the imperial palace, you feel the constant gnawing of hunger, a persistent companion even during this brief reprieve. From the brief, unsatisfying midday porridge, your day as a servant girl now leads you to a more sedentary, yet equally demanding, set of tasks: sewing and mending, needlework tasks. You might imagine a leisurely hobby, perhaps with a cup of tea. But for you, needlework was a relentless, meticulous chore, involving endless repairs of worn garments, creating new linens, or even contributing to elaborate imperial embroideries. All under the watchful eyes of strict palace matrons. Imagine your fingers pricked and calloused from countless stitches, your eyes strained in the dim light. As you mend a tear in a eunuch's tunic, or meticulously stitch a decorative border onto a palace curtain, knowing that perfection is the only acceptable standard. It's less about creative expression and more about tireless, utilitarian precision, like a very ancient, very high-volume garment repair shop. Many servant girls were assigned to the palace's textile workshops or individual family quarters, where their needlework skills were put to constant use. The imperial family's wardrobes were vast and constantly in need of mending, from minor tears in silk robes to replacing worn linings. Lower-ranking staff also needed their uniforms repaired regularly. Your tasks could range from the mundane, darning socks or patching coarse tunics, to the more intricate, such as sewing new curtains for a concubine's chamber, or even contributing to the embroidery on ceremonial hangings. The work demanded immense patience, fine motor skills, and often long hours hunched over your task. Lighting was usually poor, especially during the colder months, making eye strain a constant companion. Palace matrons would inspect your work meticulously. A crooked stitch or a poorly mended seam could lead to reprimand or even punishment. This ceaseless needlework was a quiet, almost meditative form of labor. Yet its demands were as unyielding as any physical chore. You can almost feel the rough texture of coarse thread against your fingertips, the tiny prick of a needle, and the persistent ache in your neck from hours of focused work. One mainstream historical fact is the sophistication of textile production and needlework in ancient China. Imperial workshops employed thousands of skilled artisans, both male and female, to produce the vast quantities of silk, embroidery, and garments required by the court. While servant girls often handled simpler mending, some with particular talent might be assigned to more intricate, higher-status needlework. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic hum of needles passing through fabric, a pervasive sound in the palace's quieter workrooms. Now for a quirky tidbit: sometimes, if a servant girl was particularly skilled at embroidery, she might be secretly asked by a lower-ranking concubine to subtly embroider a hidden, personal symbol or a small, auspicious character onto a piece of her clothing or a personal item, hoping it would bring luck or subtly catch the emperor's eye without being overtly noticeable. Imagine performing a tiny, clandestine act of personalized branding for a palace hopeful. What a truly subtle, and rather risky, form of secret artistic collaboration. Historians still argue whether the extensive reliance on servant girls for meticulous needlework in the palace was primarily a practical necessity for maintaining the enormous imperial wardrobe and furnishings, reflecting the labor-intensive nature of textile care before machinery, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and social conditioning, keeping numerous young women engaged in sedentary, repetitive tasks that limited their freedom of movement and interaction. Was it about maintenance, or static containment? The debate continues, much like the gentle pull of a thread through fabric. A silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that maintained the visual splendor of the imperial court, stitch by painstaking stitch. You feel the profound concentration, the subtle tension in your eyes, as you contribute to the palace's endless sartorial needs. From the quiet, painstaking precision of needlework, your day as a servant girl now takes a different, often exhausting, toll on your body: foot patrols, endless walking, You might imagine occasionally strolling between duties. But in the colossal expanse of the Forbidden City, merely moving from one task to another involved seemingly endless walking, delivering messages, fetching supplies, guiding visitors, or simply moving between different palace sections, all on foot. Day in and day out. Imagine the sheer mileage your tired feet accrue, traversing vast courtyards, long corridors, and countless stone steps. Your worn sandals offering little comfort against the hard ground, always rushing to meet the demands of the clock. It's less about a leisurely promenade and more about a perpetual, unceasing trek. Like a very ancient, very brutal, daily ultramarathon. The imperial palace was an enormous complex, stretching for square miles, often with buildings separated by vast distances. Your duties could take you from the emperor's private chambers on one end to the imperial kitchens on another, or from the laundry courtyards to a concubine's secluded garden. Delivering a message might mean a brisk walk of a kilometer or more, and then another kilometer back. Fetching supplies from distant storerooms or escorting a less favored concubine to a different section of the palace meant even longer journeys. You are constantly on your feet, your legs aching. Your feet developing calluses and blisters from the relentless pounding on hard stone or dirt paths. There are no shortcuts, no quick rides. Every destination must be reached by your own 2 feet. And quickly, as delay is not tolerated. This constant locomotion is a pervasive, almost invisible, form of labor that slowly drains your energy throughout the day, ensuring you are perpetually tired by nightfall. You can almost feel the dull throb in your arches, the burning in your calves, as you crisscross the vast imperial city. One mainstream historical fact is the sheer physical scale of major imperial palaces like the Forbidden City, covering hundreds of acres and containing thousands of rooms and buildings. These complexes required constant movement of staff and goods, making walking an unavoidable and significant part of daily life for all servants. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic scuff of hundreds of feet, a constant background hum of movement in the silent palace. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes. If a servant girl was tasked with delivering a particularly urgent message over a long distance, a senior eunuch might give her a small, hard-boiled egg to eat on the go, believing it would provide quick energy and prevent her from slowing down due to hunger. Imagine getting a tiny, portable power-up for your imperial delivery dash. What a truly practical and somewhat unglamorous form of ancient energy snack. Historians still argue whether the immense amount of walking performed by palace servants was primarily a practical consequence of the expansive palace layouts and the lack of modern transportation, reflecting the architectural realities of imperial compounds, or if it also served as a subtle form of control and physical subjugation, ensuring that servants remained perpetually exhausted and less likely to plot or cause trouble, limiting their capacity for dissent. Was it about logistics, or discipline? The debate continues. Much like the gentle scuff of worn sandals on ancient stone, a silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that kept the vast imperial machine in motion, one weary step at a time. You feel the profound physical toll, the endless demand on your body, as you literally walk your way through another day of service. From the constant, wearying foot patrols, your day as a servant girl now shifts to a more delicate, yet equally critical, task, preparing teas, ritual, and refreshment. You might imagine simply boiling water and dropping in a tea bag. But for the imperial family, tea preparation was a precise, almost sacred art form, requiring specific water temperatures, precise steeping times, and a deep understanding of different tea varieties. All to provide moments of perfect refreshment, and even medicinal benefit. Imagine carefully warming a delicate porcelain teapot, measuring out rare tea leaves with practiced movements, and pouring simmering water with just the right grace, knowing that a single misstep could displease a high-ranking concubine, or even the emperor himself. It's less about a casual brew and more about a meticulous, sensory ritual, like a very ancient, very high-stakes tea ceremony. In the palace, tea was consumed throughout the day by the imperial family and higher-ranking officials. It wasn't just a beverage, it was a symbol of hospitality, refinement, and often a medium for medicinal properties. Your duty might involve fetching specific types of tea leaves from specialized storerooms, often stored in airtight containers to preserve their freshness. Then came the intricate process of preparation, heating water to the exact temperature suitable for green, oolong, or black teas, pre-warming the teacups and teapots, and steeping the leaves for precisely the right duration to extract optimal flavor without bitterness. You'd present the tea on a delicate tray, ensuring the cups were clean and the aroma inviting. Accuracy and attention to detail were paramount. A tea that was too strong, too weak, or served at the wrong temperature could be seen as a sign of disrespect or carelessness. This task required both patience and a subtle understanding of the nuances of flavor, transforming humble leaves and water into a moment of imperial delight. You can almost feel the warmth of the porcelain in your hands, the delicate steam rising, and the subtle, earthy fragrance of brewing tea. One mainstream historical fact is the profound cultural significance of tea in China, where its cultivation, preparation, and consumption developed into sophisticated art forms and rituals over millennia. Different types of tea were prized for their unique flavors, aromas, and perceived health benefits, making tea service in the imperial court a highly specialized skill. You can almost hear the soft clink of a porcelain lid, a sound synonymous with moments of quiet imperial refreshment. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if an emperor or empress dowager was particularly fond of a rare type of tea, they might only allow it to be steeped using morning dew, collected from specific flowers or leaves within the imperial gardens, believing it imparted a purer, more ethereal flavor. Imagine waking up before dawn to carefully collect tiny droplets of dew, just to make a single cup of tea. What a truly dedicated, and utterly impractical, form of imperial beverage sourcing. Historians still argue whether the meticulous rituals surrounding imperial tea preparation, performed by servant girls, were primarily a practical necessity for extracting the best flavor and medicinal properties from valuable tea leaves, reflecting ancient culinary and health practices, or if they also served as a subtle form of aesthetic control and social stratification, demonstrating the imperial family's refined taste and boundless resources. Even in something as simple as a drink, was it about taste or status? The debate continues, much like the gentle swirl of steam above a teacup, a silent testament to the precise, unseen efforts that crafted moments of serene refreshment within the grandeur of the imperial palace. You feel the profound concentration, the delicate touch, as you create a perfect cup of tea. From the delicate precision of preparing imperial teas, your day as a servant girl now shifts to a task of sheer physical endurance and communal effort, carrying palanquins, human transportation. You might imagine palanquins were only for grand processions, but within the vast palace grounds, these human-powered conveyances were a common mode of transport for nobles, concubines, and even important officials, often requiring multiple servant girls to carry them over long distances, up and down countless steps. Imagine the combined strain on your shoulders and legs as you struggle to keep pace with your fellow bearers, the heavy weight of the palanquins swaying with each step. You're focused solely on not stumbling and causing a disastrous fall. It's less about a casual ride and more about being a living, breathing vehicle, like a very ancient, very uncomfortable, human-powered limousine service. When a high-ranking member of the imperial family or a favorite official needed to move across the sprawling palace complex, particularly older individuals or those of high status who disdained walking, a palanquin would be summoned, depending on its size and the occupant's weight. It could require anywhere from 4 to 8, or even more servant girls, or eunuchs, though female servants often carried female occupants, to bear its weight. You'd grasp the heavy wooden poles that extended from the palanquin's base, positioning them on your shoulders or with the aid of supporting pads. The key was to move in perfect synchronization with your fellow bearers, maintaining a smooth, even pace to avoid jarring the occupant. This task demanded immense physical strength, coordination and endurance, especially over long distances or up the steep, ornate steps of palace buildings. Your muscles would scream in protest, your shoulders would ache, and your breath would come in ragged gasps. But stopping or showing weakness was not an option. You can almost feel the biting pressure of the wooden pole on your shoulder, the strain in your legs, and the collective effort as you carry the weight of palace life. One mainstream historical fact is the widespread use of palanquins, sedan chairs, as a primary mode of transportation for elites in pre-modern China, especially within large complexes like the Forbidden City where wheeled vehicles were impractical. These required significant human labor, highlighting the class distinctions and the physical burden placed on servants. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic chanting of the bearers, a coordinated effort to maintain pace and balance under the heavy load. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a particular imperial consort was known to be very heavy or had a very long journey planned, the eunuchs might secretly arrange for extra, unannounced servant girls to swap in discreetly along the route, allowing the original bearers a brief moment of rest without the occupant ever realizing the change. Imagine a secret relay race, where the prize is just not collapsing under the weight. What a truly cunning, and incredibly exhausting, form of imperial logistical support. Historians still argue whether the physically brutal task of carrying palanquins for palace servant girls was primarily a practical necessity given the scale of the palace and the limitations of ancient transportation, reflecting the unavoidable realities of moving people of status, or if it also served as a deliberate tool of social control and physical subjugation, ensuring that the servants remained perpetually exhausted and subservient, reinforcing their lower status. Was it about convenience, or systematic oppression? The debate continues. Much like the gentle sway of an empty palanquin after its occupant has departed, a silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that literally moved the imperial court, one strained step at a time. You feel the profound physical exertion, the collective burden, as you become a human conveyor, carrying the very essence of palace privilege. From the physical strain of carrying palanquins, your day as a servant girl now brings you back to the bustling heart of the palace, evening meal prep, imperial feasts. You might imagine a leisurely winding down as the day progresses. But for you, the evening meant a feverish escalation of activity in the kitchens, preparing the most elaborate and numerous meals of the day for the imperial family and their favored guests. Imagine the deafening clatter of pots and pans, the intense heat from dozens of roaring stoves, the frantic shouts of head cooks as you chop, stir, and carry ingredients, all under immense pressure to create culinary masterpieces on an unimaginable scale. It's less about a quiet dinner and more about a culinary factory in overdrive, like a very ancient, very high-pressure, Michelin-starred kitchen where a single mistake could cost you dearly. The imperial evening meal was the grandest of the day, often a multi-course banquet served to the emperor, empress, concubines, and sometimes high-ranking officials or foreign dignitaries. This meant the imperial kitchens, which often housed hundreds or even thousands of cooks and servants, became a whirlwind of activity. Your role, as a low-ranking servant girl, would be foundational but relentless. You might be tasked with peeling mountains of vegetables, washing vast quantities of rice, grinding spices, or carrying heavy containers of water. Remember that backbreaking water fetching from Section 2, and ingredients to the various cooking stations. The air would be thick with steam, smoke, and the aromas of countless dishes, sweet, savory, spicy, all blending into a complex symphony of scents. The head cooks, often eunuchs, would be barking orders, and the pace would be furious. Every dish had to be prepared perfectly, tasted for poison, by a dedicated eunuch taster, of course, and presented immaculately, all within strict time frames. You worked tirelessly, your hands moving with practiced speed, your body sweating in the intense heat, driven by the sheer scale of the task and the fear of punishment. You can almost feel the frantic energy, the oppressive heat, and the overwhelming sense as you contribute to the emperor's lavish dining experience. One mainstream historical fact is the unparalleled extravagance of imperial banquets in Chinese history, especially during prosperous dynasties. These feasts often featured hundreds of dishes, rare ingredients sourced from across the empire, and elaborate culinary techniques, showcasing the emperor's wealth and power. Such scale demanded an immense, specialized labor force in the kitchens. You can almost hear the crescendo of kitchen sounds, a symphony of culinary creation for the privileged few. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes, if a rare or incredibly delicate ingredient was being prepared for the emperor's personal dish, like certain birds' nests or exotic mushrooms, a small group of servant girls might be assigned to guard it closely from theft or tampering, literally standing watch over a steaming pot or a drying rack. Imagine being a human security detail for a bowl of very expensive soup. What a truly unusual, and rather high-pressure, form of imperial ingredient protection. Historians still argue whether the extreme labor and chaotic environment of the imperial kitchens for servant girls was primarily a practical consequence of feeding thousands of people with pre-mode RN technology and the demands of elaborate culinary arts, reflecting the unavoidable realities of large-scale food production. Or if it also served as a subtle form of control and physical subjugation, ensuring that the servants remained perpetually exhausted and overwhelmed, with little capacity for independent thought or resistance. Was it about necessity, or systemic exhaustion? The debate continues, much like the gentle bubbling of a stockpot on a distant stove. A silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that transformed raw ingredients into the dazzling feasts that showcased the imperial court's unparalleled grandeur. Long before the first guest even arrived, you feel the profound physical strain, the constant pressure, as you are a cog in the vast machine of imperial sustenance. From the intense, chaotic symphony of evening meal preparation, your long day as a servant girl now shifts to a moment that, while far from luxurious, offers a crucial break: leftovers and stew, dinner time. You might imagine a proper, prepared meal. But for you and your fellow low-ranking servants, dinner was typically a humble, often unappetizing affair consisting of whatever could be salvaged from the imperial kitchens after the nobility had eaten, usually combined into a stew. Imagine huddling with dozens of other weary girls in a designated area, quickly spooning a thick, savory, but not always appealing, stew into your rough bowls, your hunger overriding any fussiness. As you finally get to rest your aching feet for a few precious minutes, it's less about a gourmet experience and more about collective, pragmatic sustenance, like a very ancient, very crowded cafeteria-style meal from the bargain bin. After the imperial family's grand evening meal had been served and cleared, the remaining food, which could still be substantial given the sheer volume prepared, would be brought to a communal area for the servants. This often included leftover rice, vegetable scraps, tougher cuts of meat not deemed suitable for the imperial table, and various broth remnants. These ingredients would be combined into a large, simmering stew, designed to feed hundreds, if not thousands of servants. While not gourmet, it was often the most substantial meal of your day, providing much-needed calories and warmth. You would line up, bowl in hand, to receive your portion, then find a spot among your colleagues, perhaps on a bench or directly on the floor. Conversation would be muted, everyone too tired and focused on eating to engage in much chatter. This communal meal was a brief window of respite, a chance to quiet the gnawing hunger that had likely been your constant companion since morning. You can almost feel the warm, thick stew in your mouth, the simple satisfaction of a full stomach, and a collective sigh of relief as everyone takes a much-needed break. One mainstream historical fact is the practice of trickle-down food consumption within large hierarchical households, where food prepared for the elite would then be distributed to lower-ranking staff based on their status. This was a common system in large courts and noble estates across many cultures, not just in China, ensuring that nothing went to waste and the entire household was fed, albeit unequally. You can almost hear the quiet scraping of spoons against bowls, a testament to the efficiency of food distribution in a sprawling imperial household. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes. If the imperial banquet had included an unusually large quantity of a specific rare ingredient, perhaps exotic fruits or game, a particularly savvy kitchen eunuch might discreetly set aside a small, slightly bruised portion of it to mix into the servant girl's stew, making it a rare and unexpected treat for that evening. Imagine digging into your bland stew and suddenly finding a juicy piece of wild boar or a sweet lychee. What a truly delightful, and incredibly rare, form of imperial culinary lottery. Historians still argue whether the practice of feeding palace servants primarily with leftovers and large communal stews was a practical necessity for efficient food management and waste reduction and a massive imperial household, reflecting sound logistical planning, or if it also served as a subtle symbol of their low status and dependence, ensuring they understood their place in the rigid hierarchy, even at mealtime. Was it about efficiency or stratification? The debate continues, much like the gentle steam rising from a shared bowl. A silent testament to the common, underlying hunger that bound servant girls together at the close of another tireless day, before the palace lights dimmed. You feel the simple comfort of shared sustenance, the quiet relief as your body refuels for the tasks to come. From the practical, communal sustenance of the evening stew. Your day as a servant girl now leads you back to the very place you began, a stark reminder of your limited world, barracks life, communal living. You might imagine a small, private space to call your own. But for you and the hundreds, if not thousands, of other low-ranking palace servants, home was a crowded, Spartan barrack, a large, shared room filled with straw mats, thin blankets, and the constant presence of your peers. Imagine the stifling air, the murmurs of restless sleepers, and the perpetual lack of true privacy, even in these moments meant for rest. It's less about a cozy bedroom and more about a human dormitory, like a very ancient, very crowded, collective sleeping arrangement where personal space is a luxury you cannot afford. These barracks, often located in the less opulent outer sections of the palace, were designed purely for efficiency and control, not comfort. They were typically large, unadorned halls or rooms, dimly lit and poorly ventilated. Your bed would be a simple straw mat laid directly on the hard floor, perhaps with a thin cotton blanket. Personal belongings were minimal. A small wooden box might hold your few possessions, if you were lucky enough to have them. There was no concept of individual rooms or even partitioned spaces. You slept shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other servant girls, the sounds of their breathing, rustling, and occasional sighs filling the air. This communal living fostered a sense of shared hardship and camaraderie, but it also meant a constant lack of personal boundaries and an enduring susceptibility to illness, as diseases could spread rapidly through the crowded quarters. Even after a day of ceaseless labor, true peace and quiet were hard to come by. You can almost feel the rough texture of the straw mat beneath you, the cool dampness of the floor, and the oppressive closeness of so many bodies in a confined space. One mainstream historical fact is the communal living arrangements for lower-ranking servants in large imperial households across many cultures, including China. This was a practical solution for housing large workforces within palace walls and often served as a means of surveillance and control. Individual privacy was virtually non-existent for those at the bottom of the social hierarchy. You can almost hear the soft, restless murmurs of 100 tired souls, a constant, low hum in the vast, quiet palace night. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a servant girl was particularly skilled at storytelling or singing folk songs, she might earn a slightly more favorable spot in the barracks, perhaps closer to a small window or away from a drafty door. As a silent reward for her ability to entertain and uplift her tired companions after a long day. Imagine earning a marginally better sleeping spot just by being the resident palace bard. What a truly unique, and rather informal, form of imperial talent recognition. Historians still argue whether the crowded and uncomfortable barak conditions for palace servant girls were primarily a practical consequence of housing a massive workforce within limited palace space and managing logistical challenges, reflecting the realities of ancient urban living, or if they also served as a deliberate tool of discipline and social control. Designed to keep servants physically subdued and psychologically reliant on the collective, limiting their opportunities for independent thought or rebellion. Was it about logistics? Or systemic subjugation? The debate continues, much like the gentle rustle of straw as someone shifts on their mat. A silent testament to the raw realities of collective living and the enduring search for a moment of quiet rest within the tightly controlled world of the imperial palace. You feel the profound exhaustion, the longing for true solitude, as you prepare for another night in the shared confines. From the crowded, restless confines of the barracks. Your day as a servant girl now requires one last surge of effort, nightly rounds, final chores. You might imagine finally collapsing onto your straw mat after dinner. But even as the rest of the palace settles into a semblance of quiet, specific duties still call, demanding one last sweep through darkened corridors, a final check of the kitchens, or the extinguishing of lamps in distant wings, all to ensure the palace is secure and ready for the next dawn. Imagine moving silently through vast, unlit halls. Your small lantern casting dancing shadows, checking latches, dousing embers, and making sure every corner is in order, knowing that a single oversight could lead to severe consequences. It's less about a quick tidy up and more about a methodical, almost ritualistic, nightly lockdown, like a very ancient, very serious, final security sweep before the whole immense structure sleeps. Your final duties before you can finally rest are crucial for the safety and efficiency of the entire palace. This could involve making last checks in the imperial kitchens to ensure all fires are safely extinguished or damped down, preventing any risk of accidental blazes. You might be part of a team checking the numerous windows and doors in various palace sections, ensuring they are securely latched. Other tasks could include refilling water basins. Remember that endless water fetching from Section 2, for morning use, tidying up communal areas that were used throughout the day, or delivering final messages that couldn't wait until dawn. These rounds are often performed in near darkness, with only a small lantern or a few strategically placed oil lamps providing illumination. The palace, so bustling during the day, now feels vast and eerie, with the soft rustle of your own movements echoing in the silence. The pressure is on to perform these duties diligently, as any lapse could have dire consequences, from a fire to a security breach, all of which would ultimately fall on the lower ranks. You can almost feel the quiet tension of the night, the vastness of the empty palace, and the meticulousness required for these final, vital chores. One mainstream historical fact is the rigorous protocols for fire prevention and security within ancient Chinese imperial palaces. Given the extensive use of wood in construction and lighting, and the constant threat of internal conspiracies, strict nightly checks by eunuchs and servant girls were absolutely essential for protecting the imperial family and the vast wooden structures. You can almost hear the soft click of a lock, the gentle scrape of a wooden door being secured, a testament to the continuous vigilance. Now for a quirky tidbit, sometimes. If a servant girl was making her rounds and encountered a particularly troublesome bat or a persistent rat in a dimly lit corridor, she might have to discreetly use a small, woven fan to shoo it away, rather than making any noise that could disturb the sleeping nobility. Imagine having to perform pest control with a silent, elegant fan in the dead of night. What a truly understated and rather absurd form of imperial animal management. Historians still argue whether these extensive nightly rounds and final chores performed by palace servants were primarily a practical necessity for ensuring the safety and operational readiness of the vast palace complex, reflecting genuine concerns about fire and security, or if they also served as a subtle form of control and physical exhaustion, ensuring that the servants were kept constantly busy and too tired to engage in any unauthorized activities, thereby reinforcing their subservient roles. Was it about safety or suppression? The debate continues, much like the gentle flicker of a distant lantern, casting long, dancing shadows on ancient walls, a silent testament to the tireless, unseen efforts that prepared the imperial palace for its brief, precious slumber. You feel the profound exhaustion, the final push of duty, as you navigate the quiet, darkened corridors. From the silent, meticulous routine of your nightly rounds, your long day as a servant girl now offers a rare, fleeting comfort, sharing stories, informal bonds. You might imagine a life devoid of personal connection. But in the crowded barracks, after the day's endless chores were finally done and the strict overseers had retreated, there were brief, precious moments when servant girls, exhausted but resilient, would gather to share whispers of their day, tales from their distant homes, or hushed rumors of the palace. Imagine huddling close on your straw mat with a few trusted companions, their faces softly illuminated by a hidden candle or the faint moonlight, as you share a tired laugh or a quiet sigh, finding solace in shared experience. It's less about grand conversation and more about the fragile, vital threads of human connection, like a very ancient, very low-key, secret support group. These moments of camaraderie were invaluable. Despite the oppressive hierarchy and the constant surveillance, human connection found a way. After the final bells had sounded and the palace had settled into its deep quiet, the barracks would hum with hushed activity. You might quietly recount a near miss with a strict eunuch, or share a bizarre request made by a particular concubine. Remember the strange tea rituals from Section 11? Others might whisper about a rare treat they managed to acquire from the kitchens, like that bonus piece of meat from Section 14, or simply complain about the relentless ache in their feet from endless walking, a constant companion, as we discussed in Section 10. These shared stories, often simple and unadorned, served as a crucial outlet for the day's stress and loneliness. They fostered a sense of solidarity among girls who were all in the same difficult situation, creating a fragile but essential network of support in a world that offered little comfort. You can almost feel the warmth of shared breath, the quiet understanding in shared glances, as you find a fleeting moment of connection. One mainstream historical fact is the formation of informal social networks and friendships among low-ranking palace servants. Despite strict rules designed to prevent plotting, shared living conditions and common hardships inevitably led to bonds of camaraderie and mutual support, which were vital for psychological survival in the harsh palace environment. You can almost hear the soft, almost imperceptible murmurs, a symphony of whispered secrets in the quiet of the barack. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, a particularly enterprising servant girl, if she had a tiny, well-hidden piece of dried fruit or a sugar candy, an incredibly rare treat, might subtly break it into minuscule pieces and share it amongst her closest friends, turning a fleeting taste of sweetness into a powerful act of shared kindness. And what a truly poignant and utterly cherished act of shared luxury. Historians still argue whether the allowance of such informal gatherings and storytelling among servant girls was primarily an unavoidable byproduct of housing a large workforce, a necessary psychological release valve that palace authorities grudgingly tolerated, or if it was also subtly managed by palace matrons and eunuchs to gauge morale and detect any signs of discontent or burgeoning rebellion among the ranks. Was it about human nature, or calculated observation? The debate continues, much like the gentle flicker of a shared, hidden candle, casting dancing shadows on tired faces. A silent testament to the enduring human need for connection and solace, even in the most controlled and demanding environments. You feel the profound relief, the fragile warmth of belonging, as you share a moment of true, unburdened humanity. From the fleeting comfort of shared stories and quiet camaraderie, your exhausted mind as a servant girl now turns inward, often consumed by a profound, pervasive longing, dream of home, personal longing. You might imagine, after such a grueling day, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep. But for many, the quiet of the barracks brought with it a surge of bittersweet memories, of family, of the village you left behind, of a simpler life now impossibly distant. Imagine lying on your straw mat. The sounds of your fellow sleepers surrounding you, as your mind drifts to the faces of your parents, the laughter of younger siblings, or the familiar fields of your childhood. A yearning that aches deep in your chest, a stark contrast to your gilded prison. It's less about simple homesickness and more about a persistent, almost spiritual ache for a life irrevocably lost. Like a very ancient, very profound, yearning for a freedom you once knew. You were likely brought to the palace as a very young girl, perhaps sold by impoverished parents, or conscripted as a tribute to the imperial court. Your memories of home might be fading, yet the emotional connection remains incredibly strong. In the stillness of the night, when the day's endless physical demands finally cease, your thoughts inevitably drift to those you left behind. You might recall the smell of your mother's cooking, the comfort of a familiar lullaby, or the simple joy of playing freely in the village lanes. These memories are a double-edged sword, a source of solace and comfort in the harsh palace environment, but also a constant reminder of the immense distance, both physical and social, that now separates you from your past. There's no easy way to communicate with your family, no casual visits. Your life is now irrevocably bound to the palace, and the dream of returning home is often just that, a dream, a silent, yearning prayer carried on the night air. You can almost feel the tightness in your throat, the sting of unshed tears, as you conjure faded images of a world now out of reach. One mainstream historical fact is the prevalence of young girls being sent or sold into servitude in wealthy households, or the imperial palace due to poverty or social custom throughout Chinese history. This practice, while providing a degree of security, also meant a permanent separation from their families and often a life of arduous labor with little hope of return. The emotional toll of this forced separation was profound and widespread. You can almost hear the silent sighs of thousands of young women, dreaming of a life they can no longer touch. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a servant girl managed to secretly obtain a small, dried flower or a pressed leaf from her hometown, she might keep it hidden deep within her meager possessions, occasionally pulling it out at night to breathe in its faint, lingering scent. A tangible connection to her distant past and a trigger for cherished memories. Imagine a tiny, withered botanical specimen holding the immense weight of an entire childhood. What a truly poignant and utterly fragile form of imperial memory keeping. Historians still argue whether the persistent longing for home experienced by palace servant girls was primarily a natural human reaction to profound separation and harsh living conditions, reflecting universal emotional needs, or if it also served as a subtle psychological mechanism for palace authorities, ensuring that servants, constantly yearning for a freedom they couldn't attain, would remain compliant and less likely to plot rebellion, as their personal aspirations were too distant to fuel active dissent. Was it about emotion, or a tool of control? The debate continues. Much like the gentle whisper of a name on a silent breath, a silent testament to the enduring power of family and belonging, even in the gilded cage of imperial service. As you drift towards a dream of a world far away, you feel the profound ache of separation, the constant pull of a distant past. From the poignant, persistent dream of home, your thoughts as a servant girl now reluctantly pivot to the inevitable, the mundane but critical reality of the next day, preparing for tomorrow, ritual repetition. You might imagine the day ending with a simple collapse into sleep. But even in your deep exhaustion, there's a final, mental checklist. A subtle preparation for the endless cycle of duties that will begin again at the first hint of dawn, ensuring that nothing is overlooked and the smooth operation of the palace remains unbroken. Imagine mentally reviewing the tasks ahead, the early water fetching, the constant sweeping, the inevitable laundry, a silent anticipation of the relentless rhythm that will soon engulf you once more. Even as your body aches for rest, it's less about planning and more about an ingrained, almost unconscious, readiness for the inevitable, like a very ancient, very silent pre-flight safety check for another day of servitude. Even as sleep begins to tug at the edges of your awareness, your mind, conditioned by years of strict palace routine, make subtle preparations for the coming day. You might mentally tick off the tools you'll need, ensuring your broom is within reach, that the water buckets are empty and ready for their early morning journey. Remember the chilling starts to water fetching from Section 2. Or that your needlework basket is organized for the sewing tasks ahead, a constant companion, as we noted in Section 9. You might instinctively smooth out your thin straw mat, preparing it for your brief, precious rest. This isn't a conscious, deliberate planning session, it's a deeply ingrained habit, a survival mechanism born from the rigid demands of palace life. Any oversight could lead to delays, reprimands, or even punishments, so even in these final moments before slumber, a part of your mind remains vigilant, quietly ensuring that the transition into the next grueling day will be as seamless as possible. The vast, intricate machinery of the palace demands constant readiness from its lowest cogs. You can almost feel the quiet hum of your own mental checklist, the subtle tension of anticipation, even as your eyelids grow heavy. One mainstream historical fact is the highly regimented and predictable daily routines imposed on palace servants. This strict adherence to schedules and repetitive tasks was crucial for maintaining order and efficiency within the massive imperial household, ensuring that every function, from cooking to cleaning, operated like clockwork. This level of organization speaks to the immense scale of imperial management. You can almost hear the silent rhythm of ingrained habit, preparing for another dawn. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, a particularly superstitious servant girl might secretly place a small, smooth pebble or a dried seed under her straw mat before sleeping, believing it would bring her strength and energy for the next day's endless physical labor. Imagine a tiny, hidden good luck charm, meant to ward off exhaustion and fuel you for a full day of carrying palanquins, a familiar ache, as we discussed in Section 12, and sweeping courtyards. What a truly poignant, and rather humble, form of ancient self-motivation. Historians still argue whether this ingrained habit of preparing for the next day among palace servants was primarily a practical necessity for efficiency and avoiding punishment, reflecting the severe consequences of negligence, or if it also served as a subtle psychological mechanism of control, ensuring that the servants remained constantly focused on their duties, even in their personal time, and had little mental space for independent thought or resistance. Was it about preparedness, or pervasive discipline? The debate continues. Much like the gentle whisper of a mental note in the quiet of the barracks, a silent testament to the tireless vigilance that extended even into the moments before sleep, ensuring the endless, unyielding cycle of imperial service would continue unbroken. You feel the profound weight of routine, the anticipation of unending demands, as your body finally yearns for rest. From the silent, internal preparation for tomorrow's ritual repetition, your body, finally beyond exhaustion, now reaches its ultimate destination, the brief sleep, exhausted rest. You might imagine a night of luxurious, uninterrupted slumber. But for a servant girl in the imperial palace, sleep was a precious, often inadequate commodity, a short, deep plunge into unconsciousness born of sheer physical depletion, lasting only until the cruel summons of the morning bell shattered the stillness once more. Imagine finally sinking onto your rough straw mat, the sounds of your baroque companions fading into a muffled hum, as your body, utterly spent, surrenders to a heavy, dreamless oblivion. A fleeting moment of true peace before the relentless demands of the new day begin to stir. It's less about rejuvenation and more about a temporary shutdown, like a very ancient, very necessary, biological hard reset. After the last chores are completed, the final quiet rounds made, and the shared whispers have faded, you finally lie down. The hard ground, the thin mat, and the crowded conditions of the barracks become secondary to the profound exhaustion that weighs down your limbs. Your muscles ache from carrying water, remember Section 2? From endless sweeping, Section 6, from the strain of carrying palanquins, Section 12, and from hours of needlework, Section 9. your eyes burn from smoke and dim light, and your feet throb from constant walking. Section 10. Sleep comes quickly, not as a gentle invitation, but as an overwhelming force. It's a deep, dreamless void. A profound unconsciousness that offers immediate escape from the day's relentless demands. There are no lingering thoughts of home. Section 18. No anxieties about tomorrow. Section 19. Just pure, unadulterated oblivion. This short period of profound rest is your only salvation, the necessary pause that allows your body to gather just enough strength to face another identical day. It's a stark contrast to the Emperor's curated tranquility, but it's sleep nonetheless, essential and all-consuming, until that piercing morning bell rips you back to reality. You can almost feel the heavy pull of unconsciousness, the instant descent into nothingness, as your body finally gives out. One mainstream historical fact is the limited sleep opportunities for low-ranking servants in large pre-modern households and palaces. Their workdays were often extremely long, beginning before dawn and ending late into the night, leaving only a few hours for sleep, which was often disturbed by the communal living environment. This relentless schedule was a hallmark of their servitude. You can almost hear the deep, even breathing of exhausted bodies, a quiet testament to their utter depletion. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes, if a servant girl was particularly weary, she might briefly experience a phenomenon known as sleep paralysis. That strange feeling of being awake but unable to move or speak. Often accompanied by vivid, sometimes frightening, hallucinations as she drifts between wakefulness and sleep. Imagine experiencing a vivid, terrifying nightmare that feels completely real, right as you're trying to finally get some rest. What a truly unsettling, and utterly unwelcome, companion to extreme fatigue. Historians still argue whether the inadequate sleep and perpetual exhaustion endured by palace servant girls was primarily an unavoidable consequence of the vast amount of labor required to run an imperial palace, reflecting the brute realities of pre-industrial work, or if it also served as a subtle but effective method of control, ensuring that the servants remained physically and mentally subdued, too tired to organize, resist, or even fully comprehend the depth of their own subjugation. Was it about necessity, or systemic suppression? The debate continues, much like the gentle, rhythmic inhale and exhale of a deeply sleeping body, a silent testament to the raw human need for rest, even for those whose lives were defined by ceaseless toil, as they prepared, unconsciously, for the exact same routine to begin again with the first light of dawn. You feel the profound exhaustion, the instantaneous surrender, as the vast, quiet night finally claims you. And so, as the final echoes of the Forbidden City's night fade, you can feel the air around you growing softer, the vibrant tapestry of ancient court life gently dissolving. We've journeyed through the meticulously orchestrated hours of a servant girl's day, witnessing the relentless cycle of labor, the brief moments of camaraderie, and the constant ache of personal longing that defined her existence within the gilded cage of the imperial palace. You've seen how every detail, from the back-breaking water fetching to the communal dinners, contributed to a life of ceaseless effort and profound humility. Let the whispers of those bygone barracks, the imagined rustle of straw mats, and the faint scent of wood smoke softly recede. The world of imperial service, with all its intricate demands and profound human resilience, is now gently merging with the comforting quiet of your own space. There's no need to cling to the intricate details of laundry routines or the subtle dangers of foot patrols. Just let the gentle hum of history, a soothing presence in the quiet darkness, wash over you. May your thoughts be peaceful, your dreams be deep, and your rest be undisturbed. Sleep well. End of script. Sweet dreams.